In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the head creator file that I put together that should hopefully make things a little bit easier for you to generate ideas for facial structures when you're first getting a project going. So if you take a look over in the Subtool area, what I've got is a folder structure that I've created, and I've got a lot of different parts that I've put in here. I'll put this on solo mode right now and just step through these with the up and down arrow key. And you can see I've got the head top. I've got polygroups also to make it maybe a little bit easier for you to turn off and hide and show selections. And you can do that by holding down Control and Shift and then clicking on a polygroup like this. And so you can see that should make it really easy to isolate a particular part, and if you hold down Control and click, you can mask that part off. And if you want to invert the mask, you can just Control click, hold down Control and click on it to smooth out the mask, and Control and Alt, and you can tighten up a mask. So maybe that makes it a little bit easier for you to select parts and then mask those things off pretty quickly. And so I've gone through for each one of the pieces, and you can see this is what I've got for a jaw. And then we've got the inner part for a neck. We've got the sternal-mastoid muscle structure that goes down along the sides of the neck. And then we got trapezius muscles that are in the back, like this. We've got a set of eyebrows at the top. We've got eye upper lids. We've got eyeballs. And we've got eyelids lower, like this, right through here. And then we have a nose structure and ears, like that. And if I take it off solo and then just bring everything back, hit Shift R and do a render, while I've got polyframe turned on, I turn off the line information so you don't see a bunch of wireframes on there. You can see all the parts put together to form the basis of the head here. And whenever you render this way, it's also going to show you all the different polygroups all at the same time. So you can get an idea of all the different parts and pieces that have been put together and some things that you'll have at your disposal for control. So you can start off with this project, and then you can start to go ahead and manipulate this. I've got Symmetry turned on, so you can tap X to turn on and off Symmetry. And then it's going to be a matter of changing some of these features. So let's just go through, and you can change these features with me. I also want to point out that you can hold down Alt and you can click on one of these pieces like this. Maybe you might have to, you saw I had to make my brush size a little bit smaller, just tapped S and drag like this, or you can hold S and then drag for brush size. And if I hold down Alt, I should be able to click on these different pieces and select them like this, so I can do the upper eye, lower. I have noticed that if my brush is too big, sometimes I got to make my brush size a little bit smaller, and then I can kind of pick those parts out like that. So I'm just going to select the ears, and I'm going to put it on the Gizmo Tool. And I've got Symmetry turned on. Let's see if this works the way that I would expect. Sometimes I do have to turn on maybe local like this for symmetry. And let's just do this. I'm going to hold down Alt and then click on this. That's going to put the manipulator over here on this side. And if I hold down Alt and then click on the go to the center of unmasked points, I can do that. Hold down Alt and then click this. This resets the orientation of this, so it's straight up and down. And now I can kind of rotate this around. Now if you want to move the pivot point of this, you can hold down Alt, you can click and drag this in. So I'm going to do that. And I was going to push the ear out like this, rotate it out a bit. And I'm just going to make the character a little bit like a funnier kind of character, I guess. So I can also scale this way. We can scale down depending on what you want to do with your ears. You could scale this way. You could also scale uniform like this. This is where, if I want to scale, I do notice I'll put this on the local like this, and let's tap, let's go take it, sorry, I need to put on local sim. There we go. Put on local sim, and then that point I can scale up and down and keep this right where I want it. Okay, so I've got that. Let's do that for the ears. What I can do with the face now, maybe I want to do some kind of smile. I'm going to hold down Alt and then click on this part, make my brush size a bit larger, put it on the move brush, so we can do B and then M and then find move on there that way. So I'm just going to make my brush size really large, kind of drag this up and drag this out like this. I'm going to drag this piece down. I really don't need to see the polyframe anymore. I kind of know all that stuff's there. I just kind of want to show that off. So I'm going to hide some of that, and I can kind of move these surfaces out, have it intersect where I want. Because when we're done, what we're going to do is join everything back together. So I'm going to hold down Alt here, and then so we can just let the surfaces just run into each other, and that should be just fine for things. But whatever I can do to kind of make sure that, like, if I don't want seams to show up later, and if I don't want to have to fix that, I can try to do my best to get rid of some of that stuff now. So it's going to do this here. Hold down Alt and then click on that. It's still possible that you can also sculpt on these surfaces. Now, since they're separate objects, you're not going to be able to sculpt across this surface onto this one. So that's the only kind of disadvantage with this system that I've got going on right here for you. But the goal is to just kind of quickly do this to get a rough shape, and then after that we'll join it together, and then you'll be able to sculpt away on these things. So I'm just going to sculpt a little bit more on there, and if I want to define that nasolabial fold, I'll put it on Damien Standard and do something like this right here, like that. And then now if I want to tweak the nose out, hold down Alt and click on that, put on the move brush because we're doing these larger kind of forms, and it's really going to be up to you what you want to do with this nose. If you want to pull it up on here, or you want to pull the nose shape out, pull it in. So again, you're going to just kind of explore the use of each one of these tools, these subtools, and then find some kind of interesting shape for yourself. I'll put on the inflate, and then if I want to puff those nostrils out a little bit, I could do that. If I wanted to make it look a little bit more interesting, like maybe this guy was a fighter and he got his nose broke a couple times, you could do something like that. But I think I'm going to be good just here like that. Let's move on to, I'll go back to the chin. I want to do just a little bit to the chin. So I'll maybe pull this up, pull his jaw out, and I kind of want to pull his chin structure out like this. I think it looks kind of interesting. Now I'm going to go to his brows, hold down Alt and click on this, and maybe if we want to probably try to do some kind of expression, if we drag like this down and this up, you can see we can do kind of like a happy, kind of surprised. If I hit undo, if we drag this down in this direction like this, we can get kind of an angry kind of look. And maybe we pull this down as well and then pull that up. So depending on what you want to do with that, I kind of like going the first direction I was showing you at the beginning, something like that. And if we pull this in towards the middle more, we could do that and push these out just a little. I'll hold down Shift and just kind of smooth out the results. And I'll let this run into that a little bit. And then now we can start working maybe on the eyelids. Hold down Alt and click on this. And I can just raise this up. Raise this down a little. Hold down Alt and then click on that. If you want, you can pull the shapes out. You can pull it down. But it really kind of just depends on, you can try these little moves out and you kind of see what it ends up building for yourself for expression and how it changes just what you kind of think about the character. And if he's a little like older, he's going to have probably more meat underneath the bottom of his eye and through here. So yeah, we'll do that, and I'll pull this in. If we want a thinner neck, we can pull this information in quite a bit. And I'm just going to select this part of the neck that's inside of here and then pull that in as well. And then we can take the trapezius muscles and then pull those in. So we're building a much thinner character at that point. And we go to the head. So I also have these polygroups on here. If we hold on Control and click on that, we can hold that. We can hold down Control and click on here, and that'll smooth out the mask. And then if you wanted to kind of pull this out, you could build up a bigger ridge, something like that. Hold down Control and then just drag in there, and that'll get rid of that. And we could just smooth out the results if you want. So I'll just move this out. And obviously you've got full control to change the shape of the skull and what you want to do with the skull. And if you want to kind of tweak that out and exaggerate that, you can do that. Okay, and so when you're done with your model and you're happy with kind of where things sit, again, this is just a general direction for where this is going. So it's not the final thing. So it's just one part of the step to get us where we want to be for things. Okay. When we're done with that, we can go and we'll take this folder and we'll union the entire folder together. Before we do that, I'm just going to save this. I think you should save at this point for sure. And I'll do this, just call this version 1, like that. And so I've saved the information, it's ready to go. Just want to make sure in case there's ever a crash or anything, you don't want to lose that work. So we can go here to this little gear icon in the Subtool folder that I've created, and you can say Boolean folder. And it'll go through, and you can see up here the progress bar. It's going to take a little bit of time for it to run through and do everything that it needs to do to join these parts together. So as it's running, basically what it's going and doing is taking each one of these parts, unioning it together, and then getting rid of the inner parts of this, so it's going to make a one skin model. And if everything went okay, we should be able to see this new model that it called UMesh head top, and the folder group is still there, so all that stuff is still in the folder group, didn't get rid of it, still holds it in there, and it turns off the visibility of it. So it's actually a really nice way to work. So when you turn on your polyframe, you should have all your polyframe information. Everything should be there. Now if we click on this, and again, I don't have line turned on. If I do that, it's just really busy with how much geo is being shown. If we hold down Control and Shift, we can click on one of these parts, and you can see there might be some inner parts still to this, but it shouldn't be the way that it was probably before. So it does try to chop off chunks of the model and union that stuff together. The next step that I would suggest is that we use Dynamesh. So we're going to take this and we'll turn it into Dynamesh. And let's just click and drag up here and then go to Geometry and open that up. And we'll open up the Dynamesh area. And I'm going to start with a resolution of 600 first. And I'll take the blur off. And I might have to type that again and hit Tab. I've just noticed this. Sometimes it's kind of weird setting that up. So I'll click Dynamesh to turn Dynamesh on, and then just kind of evaluate where we're at with things. So I know it doesn't look as crisp and clean as what we had before, but I'm not really trying to go super high res with this yet, because I just want to hold down Shift and be able to quickly kind of smooth these results out like what we see here. Now the only thing that I might suggest is this. I don't want to fight with the fact that I've got these eyeballs in here, and if I hold down Shift and smooth that out, we're going to affect the eyeball, and I really don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and then click on the eyeball part, and then I'm going to basically do this. Control Shift, click on it, and I'll Control Shift, click on it again, and it'll give me the inverse of what we were seeing there. I can use this delete hidden down here, and then we can remesh, and it should close the surface off, and we can smooth that out. We'll do that like this a little bit, and now we don't really have any eyeballs to work with. But if you remember our head creator folder, we do have our eyeballs in here, and we can click on them and we'll duplicate them, and let's just go ahead and click and drag them out, and then we'll close the folder back up and the folder is hidden. So now we got some eyes that will not be disturbed or touched by anything that we do on the head mesh that we see. So just hold down Shift and then kind of drag on that, and then we can remesh. And you might notice, like, if you get these little holes, what I found that I could do with this is just go to Inflate, lightly inflate an area and then remesh. And as the surface gets close enough together, it'll close up those holes that might be there. So there's a big hole kind of right in here. I'm going to inflate, smooth that out. Just keep smoothing it out just a little bit like that. And I'll inflate just a little bit and then smooth this out. Now you can see, like, I forgot to turn symmetry on, so I can tap X for this, and then that's fine. I have mirror and weld, so it's going to mirror from this direction over. So if you like the detail from this side, you're going to have to mirror it first and then click mirror and weld, and you can always get your symmetry back that way. So don't ever worry about that. Put it on Dynamesh, or sorry, Damien Standard, and then I'm just going to dig into here like this, and then going through this line a little bit more like this. So this is how you can definitely refine your sculpt. If the eyes are a little bit faceted like this, I can just hit Control D to add a subdivision level. So I'll just divide like that, and now we've got subdivision levels on the eyes, which not a big deal. We don't really need to talk about that too much, but I just want to have that surface look a little bit smoother and use something other than Dynamesh for that. So now we've got the ability that we can sculpt across this one surface. Before there were two different surfaces, so we couldn't fill in this information that I'm gonna do on the cheek right in through here. So we'll just do the clay tubes, and we'll sculpt along through here like this, and hold down Shift and kind of smooth this out. Now, if you've ever run into the situation where you're using Dynamesh and you get to this point, kind of where we're at with this resolution, and you want it to smooth, there is a smooth stronger, so we can do this. We can go open up the comma key and open up Lightbox. We can go to Brush, and we can go to the Smooth folder, double click on that, open that up, and there is a smooth stronger, so we'll double click on that. Oops, let's see if I can get this to open up. Let me do that again just because it just looked a little bit weird because it was sliding around. So we double click on that for smooth stronger, and it'll tell you, do you want to have this option on until the next time you restart ZBrush, some kind of option like that. So just go ahead and say yes to that. And then now when we smooth, it should do exactly what it says. It's going to smooth a lot stronger than what it was doing before with that brush. So we'll do this, and I'm going to continue this line all the way in through here, maybe smooth this out. And here's where we can think about wrinkle patterns and how maybe the wrinkles kind of flow out and form over time. Like this. And if you want to do something like eyebrows, you can put on Damien Standard, hold down Alt, and just drag out, and I've got symmetry on. Now if you want to break symmetry, you can turn X off while you do this, but this will just help speed up the workflow and get things going a lot quicker. Something like that. If we want for this part of the mouth and the lips, if it's a male character, sometimes this is a lot stronger in through here. We can hold down Shift and just smooth this out. You can hold down Alt, click on that to define the ridge of that lip, hold down Alt and then click on this, define that ridge, hold down Alt, and then kind of click through there, and then just smooth the results a little bit. If you have that smooth stronger on, you might just want to just barely kind of tap on the model to get that to go. You could always do work to define the nostrils. Hold down Alt and then just drag along there lightly to kind of build up a ridge. If I make this a little bit smaller, I can dig out this tear duct area like that. So again, if he's a much older character, you're going to get some wrinkles like this, maybe even coming up in here. And we can always define this ridge again, holding down Alt with Damien Standard, and then just kind of crisping that edge up a bit more. Hold down Alt here. And if you want to build some blemishes or things like that, standard brush is going to be pretty good. If you tap L, you can turn lazy mouse on and off. I would turn lazy mouse off, and then you can just kind of do some things like this. So this is encroaching in. This is definitely, we already did the large forms with all the shapes that we did, and then everything we're kind of defining here is medium level detail, right? But we can still put it on the move brush, do tap 4, and do larger proportional stuff. So we're kind of bouncing around from primary and secondary forms like this. We'll put on Damien Standard again, and then just kind of maybe do a few little wrinkles like this. Okay. And then after we get this in pretty good shape, the next thing I want to do, I do want to show you how to add a few more pieces just via insert mesh brushes. So let's do this. I'm just going to hold down Shift and then kind of lightly smooth through here like this. And if you want to build up some wrinkles in the back of the neck area where that might kind of start to wrinkle up, just think about the head moving and rotating back and forth over time, and that's going to produce like this wrinkle pattern. Just holding down Shift after that to kind of clean that up a bit. And we'll think about the neck too. So this is where a reference would definitely come in handy. If you're doing like an older character or whatever, it should be very easy for you to go on something like Google and get some reference. And we were looking at using PureRef, and you could have your PureRef board open off to the side. Like this, and I'm getting really close to having this wrapped up. Something like that. So I think that's starting to be pretty cool. Like this. I'll just do a few more wrinkles here. Like that. Okay, so I think that's fairly interesting. The next thing I'm going to show you is we'll use some insert mesh brushes. And let's just go tab B and then go I. And then let's just start with the primitive meshes that you see. And I'll do IMM primitives like this. And so you've got these different shapes that you could potentially use on here. Now, if I was going to make this like some kind of a silly like Frankenstein kind of character, I could click and drag this out like this. If we put it on the Gizmo tool, it should give you the correct orientation for how you drug this thing out. So it should be easy for you to maybe straighten this thing back up, and you can just rotate it into place a little bit if you wanted something like that. And if you hold down Control, you could drag out another copy of this while everything's masked off. And then remember, if we got this local sim turn on, we should be able to scale it up this way and scale this thing down and through here. So you don't have to create a Frankenstein character at all. It's just something I thought it'd be kind of cool to show you these shapes. Now the other interesting thing is, while you've got this in this Gizmo mode, you can cycle through any of these other insert shapes that are on here for the insert mesh. So that's definitely pretty cool. I'm going to hit undo to get back to where I was at. And I like that shape like that. I'm going to hold down, I'm going to take it off that, put it on draw. I'll hold down Control, then get rid of that. Now if I do this where I want to isolate these parts away, what I can do is hold down Control and Shift and then click on the head. Now we do have polygroups on there. There is a hotkey. If we do Control Shift A, it should select everything that was part of that island and then just grab it all as far as the head. Now this is hidden like this. There's a couple different options for you to split things apart. You can go to the Subtool and you can say Split. And you can say Split Hidden, and that would split those parts off. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is if we were going to build a mask for this, if we do Control Shift, let's select these parts here. And you know how to hold down Control and then click in the viewport, hold down Control Shift and bring everything back. And then now for splits, they have split masked points, or you can split unmasked points, either one. So let's say split masked points, like that. And then we can rename this. I never did rename this. I'll call this head, like this, and then call this bolts. Now the reason I want to do that is, I'm going to turn on the visibility of that. I want to maybe add some subdivision levels to this. And if I turn on the polyframe, like that, if I hit Control D, you can see what's going to happen. It will divide it. It looks not so good. I want to hold these shapes, right? So we can do the Dynamesh. Everybody knows how to do Dynamesh by now. We can turn the Dynamesh on, remesh, and we've got that. So that's a possibility. But you see how chunky this is and everything? We could run a polish by feature on it if we wanted, but you can see how that kind of smooths out the model at that point. So I'm going to push it back, hit undo until we get to this point within here. I'm going to show you this technique with polygroups. If we open up polygroups, we can open that up and we can say group by normal. And I'm just going to use whatever the default is, and it looks like it should do everything I need to pick up this surface, this surface. So it's basically defining these parts that I want. And then under geometry, if I open that up, I can go to crease and I can say crease polygroup like this. And I'm going to put up the creasing level up to, let's just do 3 like that. And then now I'm going to divide, and it should hold the creasing information up until the 3rd subdivision. So I'm going to divide, divide, and then divide one more time. And then after that 3rd level, you can see if I turn off the polyframe, it will start to round out this. And so I'll divide one more time, and you can see it gives us a nice bevel like that. If I divide one more time like that, that looks nice and crisp and clean. Now the only thing is you're working with subdivision levels at that point, which is completely fine. It's just you're going to kind of have to know a little bit more about topology, and that if we don't have nice even distribution of topology within there, it can be a little bit weird to sculpt on. So we might get some like really good things that look good across the edge, but you saw what it does here, and it tears that up. And that's because of there's just not as much topology in the center part. Now, I don't want to get too much in topology at this stage for the introduction to digital sculpting, but what we can do is if we make really clean geometry like that, what we can do is just turn that into Dynamesh pretty quickly. And so we've got Dynamesh on, hold down Control, and then drag. And you can see it's going to give us that shape, and it's going to be Dynamesh. And then now we can start sculpting on it. Now, it's a little bit not so great as far as resolution goes. If we need to pump up the resolution a little bit more, I'll take it to like 800, remesh, and then maybe we're just going to smooth lightly on there. But then now look what happens as we sculpt across these surfaces. We can sculpt with like the Damien standard, and we get nice, clean results this way, like that. Okay, and then maybe I'll put it on trim dynamic, and I could hit along through here and roughen up some edges a little bit like that. Okay, and so the last thing I want to show you is how we can take the model, paint a mask on it, and then we can use the mask to extract a whole brand new shape, and we'll use that for making hair. So we've got this on the head. Real quick before I go any further, I'm just going to Control S, and I'm going to save this model real quick just so we don't lose any of the information. And now I'm going to hold down, as we paint on this model, hold down Control, and this will give us the shape. I'm going to do this kind of quickly. So I'm just going to roughly give a shape. And I'll go across the back, hold down Control, and I'll make some smaller little pieces of maybe hair that come across like this. Do one in the back. Now, if you want to fill in a big chunk, you can hold down Control and drag off the model, and it'll do a marquee like this, and you can maybe fill in some that way. So we got that. If you want to take away from the mask, hold down Control and Alt, and then you can paint out the mask. My brush is a bit big that time, so I'm going to paint this out like this. And if you want to tighten up the mask, Control and Alt, click on it. If you want to smooth the mask, Control and just Control, click on it. So I'll Control Alt, and I'll click on that. And I think that's going to look pretty good. The only thing I'm not happy with is this shape right there. So do Control and Alt, and I'll click on it. So like that, I think that looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to extract this. So we're going to go to the Subtool area and go down to the bottom, say Extract, and then this is just going to be a preview. So we'll hit Extract, and it should give us this thickness, and you can see how thick of a shape that this is going to make. And if you don't like it, as soon as you move the model, it goes away because it's just a preview. So I'm going to do this at 0.04, and I'll hit Extract, and I'll say Accept. And at that point, it will make actual geometry for this. So you can rename it and call this hair. And what it does is it masks this thing out, and it makes polygroups too for us. So we could use this polish by feature, and I'm going to turn off this little donut hole thing there. And then you can get really crisp, clean shapes that way. I don't necessarily want that just because I'm going to make this into hair. So we could go to Geometry and go back to the Dynamesh, and then we can make this pretty low, like 256. I'll just click Dynamesh, and the blur is on for that. Hold down Shift and see what we get for smoothing out the results of this. So I'm just going to quickly remesh this. It's a separate object, so we can put it on the move brush, and we can move this around and kind of tweak it and just let it intersect with the head, and we'll always get a nice kind of crisp, clean edge. Hold down Shift and then get rid of that ridge thing you see there. Now, if we want to sell the illusion that this head is even squared off, you could do it with just the hair alone at that point. So I'm going to pull this out just a little bit more and pull this part in. and I'll keep moving this around, but I don't want the skull to show through, so I got to be a little bit careful about that. So it's just a matter of kind of you manipulating this surface, pushing and pulling it around. So I'll do something like that. And then now I can use Damien Standard, and what I would do is start to try to define shapes like this. I'll either dig in, hold down Alt, and then I can dig out. And then this is for a more stylized kind of look with these hard edges like this. So if you're doing more realistic, then you would have to be going a lot smaller with the strokes that you're making on this. Hold down Alt for that. Then I'll remesh. We can always use clay polish too after that, and you can see that gives us some really clean, nice results. And I'll hold down Alt. So we're just alternating between raising the surface and then hiding the surface. And when it gets really close to the mesh like this, it's kind of cool how it will just dig into the surface and make a really clean edge like that. And then the last part, let me pull this in just a little bit and make sure it runs into, I want it to run into and intersect with the head, just to make sure it's actually sitting on the surface and I don't have any gaps in between there. I'm just thinking of if I ever wanted to 3D print this thing or something like that. So that's the only reason I'm kind of like really talking about that or thinking about that. Clay polish, and then maybe we'll take the resolution up a little bit higher, 400. And then remesh, and that's looking pretty good. And then now what we could do is add some specific parts to this, and we'll go to Subtool, and we'll go append, and we'll do a sphere 3D, and take this, and then just rename it hair piece 1, like that, and then we can just move it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it out here, make it quite a bit smaller, scale it this direction, scale it this direction, so we've got some kind of like potato chip almost like shape, and then just drag it up here and drag it off to the side. Maybe do something like this, and then I will put it in the move tool and start to move this way, and then start to just push it around, smooth it to see if I can't form this into some other kind of shape. So you might have to push and pull it around a little bit. You could use inflate if you ever want to kind of blow the surface back up. Like that. And you can always hold down shift to kind of smooth it out. And if you hold down shift and then smooth the end of it, we can taper that a little bit more. Now it's not in Dynamesh mode. You can go to geometry, convert that to Dynamesh pretty quickly, and I'd put this maybe 256, somewhere around there. And that's going to give us enough geometry to kind of still work with things. It's not too low. Let's put on Damien Standard, and again, just even with this one piece, if we hold down Alt, we can do crisp lines this way, and then just dig into the surface a little, and so we're maybe going to make a piece like that. And then if we put it on the move tool, and hold down Alt, and then click on go to this unmask center, and then Alt to reset that by doing this and holding Alt. If we hold down Control and drag, we can get another piece, and that'll duplicate it that way. That's staying all within the same model, so it's going to be all the same subtool if we do it that way. The other way, let's just make sure we've only got one piece for that. The other way we can do it is just duplicate it, and then that becomes a whole nother subtool that we could work with. Remember, if you have separate subtools, you can't sculpt across them. So it's really, at that point, you got to make some judgment calls for how you want to work with some of these different surfaces. So I'm just going to push this a little bit more through here. Just go ahead and drag this in through here. And because I just want to hide the shape of this a little bit more, I'm going to duplicate this one more time, and I'm going to rotate it and then push it up here like this, and then maybe rotate it back, and then put on the move brush, and then push this shape here like this. Get something a little bit more like that and get it to sit on the head. I think that's looking pretty neat. We can always remesh and then clay polish, and that'll get that nice and crisp for an edge like that. Okay, so not the best hair I've ever made, but just want to give you some ideas for some potential techniques that you could take a look at for this. So let's drag this out a little bit through here like that. And so I'll just frame this up, and remember, if you want to do your shots, you can turn off the floor. We could do some shots like this. Shift S, Shift S, Shift S, Shift S. Maybe I go all the way back with this and do Shift S. And so that's going to give us quite a bit to look at. I was using the snapshot tool, so just hit the Windows key and type in our snipping tool, type in that, and you can get that tool. Got it on this rectangular snip, and if I just say new, I can click and drag out like this, and then just build a screenshot. Kind of like that. Now I might have to go into Photoshop and paint some of these things out. Watch your brush, where your brush location is, if you don't want to get that within there. But if I want to clear that out, hit Control N, and then remember, if we get this framed up, I'm going to save the file. And I like to store a camera too, so I'll just call this camera _ 001. So I can always render this again. So I'll just say File, Save As, save the file, and then do a BPR render. Like that, and should be good to go, and we can export that out. So hopefully this will give you a lot to kind of work with and think about, and should give you some kind of template to get you jump started on making heads pretty quickly, and then adding separate parts to it, and then quickly being able to extract things and make things like hair, and push your design a little bit further and become a little bit more complex at this second round.